Charlie, who was the president of the Gale Brothers, to honor her son's death by bringing peace. So there became a peace treaty where 40 of Bronx gangs signed a peace treaty, and through that, they started having music events where they would invite other gangs along, which guys played instruments and whatever they did, they all joined in, and we started having basically block parties instead of gang rumbles. Eventually, block parties turned into DJ sessions. DJ sessions turned into rap music. Graffiti actually was the first thing that really the ex-gang members started doing. We all started doing murals on trains and things of that nature. So basically, what Jim Carrey did was, he took the story that he actually found how we architect the hip-hop movement. Now, the hip-hop movement was originally created for peace, and because of peace. Later on, when it became a commodity where it was being bought and sold, it turned into something different. But the original inception of hip-hop culture was always about peace. So the movie basically takes you through the timeline to where gangs started, gangs fought, then he killed, gang peace, music started, and then about, I would say 1973, if you ever heard of Kool Herc, who basically they call him the godfather of hip hop, but you know, all this happened prior to Kool Herc. So this is what birthed Kool Herc after the gangs calmed down. Kool Herc came on the scene, and then Flash and everybody else that you may not have heard of came on the scene, and basically that's how hip hop culture started. So the message we were trying to get out to the world, the movie's been all over the world, was that the original inception of hip hop was to bring peace to the community. And straight from that, and we're trying to basically remind people that really we did a lot of stuff, and I'm sure you brothers up here did a lot of stuff. But at the end of the day, we found peace in our music. You know, music was our thing that we came back to at the end of the day, no matter what we were doing. And we would play, you know, well, I grew up on love songs. I don't know, I grew up on Delphonics, Blue Magic. You know, I grew up on love songs. So we did a lot of stuff, but when we came home, it was all about love songs. In fact, you know, I don't know the culture here, but I'm sure it's not too far from us. I mean, we used to practice singing, so we went to the party, you know, we could sing to the girls. Yeah. I don't know if you did that, but that's what we did, you know. We were lovers, you know, at the end of the day. Yeah, we did a lot of violent stuff. A lot of violent stuff. Very violent time in New York City. I was just talking to this brother earlier, and he was saying he drove through the Bronx in the late 60s, and he couldn't believe that the movies were true. But they were true. The Bronx was burning. We had 30,000 buildings burned in 10 years. 30,000 buildings because of just arson. And what people don't realize is when they see all those burnt out buildings in the Bronx is, we lived there. You know, we didn't have any money to go anywhere else after the buildings burned out. I mean, who had money? So when your building burned out and became, you know, condemned, you stayed.
Okay, thank you. You can just put it right there, Mr. Murphy. I'll be showing this film. Something I want to share with you guys before we do this 2-minute promo. Someone had said, and I heard it said, and I don't know if it was said for that reason, but I did hear it. Someone said, why is anybody talking about violence in the community? What's the big deal? Why talk about it now? There's so much going wrong and been gone wrong and done wrong. Why talk about violence? Are they picking on the people that are the most victimized? Are they blaming the victim? And you know what my response to that is? And it is this. The reason we are talking about violence is because it is a problem. The reason we are talking about violence is because between 1980 and 2013, over 250,000 young black, just one category of us, men between the ages of 14 and 44 were murdered inside this country. This highly industrialized, very, very wealthy country. One of the most educated countries, yet has that kind of a statistic. Nobody was talking about it the way that we are talking about it. So we saw an opportunity to add our voices to the conversations that were actually occurring, because there are many groups that work on behalf of improving the quality of life on the east side, in East Buffalo, and in the entire region, in fact. But we felt it was important that we encourage a conversation to happen, a dialogue to occur, where we encourage persons who look like ourselves and we looking like the community, introspection. And we encourage an added emphasis being placed on the need to make a difference and create a better tomorrow for our young people, because they can't go to school and be safe, because they can't play on the street, they can't ride their big wheel, they can't get on a tricycle, they can't even ride a subway train. Mr. Murphy, did you see what happened on that train in New York City, on the queue on the Manhattan Bridge? Someone took out a gun, walking back and forth on the train, and just took it out and took the life of a man who I think worked at Goldman Sachs. He was a Caucasian gentleman, but took his life for no reason in an unprovoked attack. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we've been doing this forum since February. A couple of weeks ago, at our last forum, I was in front of a camera and just thinking to myself, you know, what else can we do? Is there something else we can do? Is there something else we can say? We know a lot of people watch this event on Facebook. Thank God for social media sometimes. We know that. We know there are some people who really need to hear what it is that is being expressed and that's being shared here, that are not, for a very, very good reason in some of those instances, cannot come and be part of the live audience. But I thought to myself, you know, we got to find another thing that we can do to kick this thing up, because what's happening all over the country is worse than what we are experiencing here. And I don't know about anybody else, but I'm willing to bet, if I had to bet, that when that little 3-year-old baby was murdered on East Ferry Street, that broke a lot of hearts. It broke mine, all right? So I know I'm not alone. We have got to do more. And I said to the media establishment, and if you ask they tell you absolute truth, they're going to confirm what I'm going to tell you. I said, please report the facts. Please report the truth. Tell our community how bad this problem of gun violence and violent crime really truly is. Because you know what? Sometimes you get so entrenched in your suffering that you go numb. And you stop even realizing and being able to fathom. Your mind won't even let you understand completely how devastating your environment is to you. Because sometimes you have to do this to yourself. And your mind will do that for you without you even telling it to. It will try to shield and protect and insulate you. But we are women warriors is saying, here we are, Lord, and we are going to tell you how bad this problem is, because we want our senior citizens to be able to sit on their porch again. We want our little boys and girls to be able to ride the big wheels and the tricycles. And we want everyone who runs a business or who has a job to go to or who wants to go shopping in a grocery store, we want them to be safe. So we are going to do it. And we're going to do it until the end of this year. And at that point, we're going to draft that community compact concerning youth violence and opportunity. And we're going to do it because we care. So I'm going to just share this, and then we're going to watch this excerpt from this wonderful movie that everyone who's involved has done. I want to show you this. And I want to show our panelists, this is what I'm going to be sharing with them. These are violent crime, gun violence statistics. And this is from the United States of America. And I want you to listen and really truly hear me, because these statistics, this problem impacts our young people. It's wonderful to have those soundbite moments and opportunities and hashtags. It's really truly wonderful. It's awful creative. But at the same time, this is a life and death crisis that is going on here. Our young people deserve, they have got to have safety. They've got to be safe in their persons. So please hear me when I tell you that yes, police brutality is a problem in the United States of America. Death by police really, truly does happen. There is a need to overhaul whatever training, whatever it is that has to happen. I know we can't read minds, and that includes the people who run departments, but they've got to do a better job of getting a type of candidate that truly believes that in the eyes of the Lord who created all of us, even if you're not a Christian, all men are created equal is supposed to mean precisely that. That means our humanity as black and indigenous persons of color is just as valuable as theirs, if they are a Caucasian, if they are a Latino, if they are whatever they may be. So listen to these statistics. If anybody ever tells you that it's more important to talk about police killings and police brutality than it is community crime, you please do remember, we got little index cards out there on the table. Tell them this. In year 2020, the number of police shootings of black persons and brown persons, it was 1,021. That's 1,000 people that are no longer alive because the police officer, we don't know the reason in every case, but we do know that in some cases, each and every year, it is unjustified killing that is happening at the hands of police. And now I want you to hear this. Since 1963, the number of black and African American persons who were murdered in this country is 186,239 persons. That's almost like the number of black people we have in all of the city of Buffalo. That's an incredible statistic right there. But look at this. The total number of murders in year 2020, when there were 1,000 police killings, the total number of killings that happened at the hands of a black and African American perpetrator and had a black and African American individual that was the victim of that crime. Listen again, 1,021 police killings of a black and African American person, but listen to this statistic, 21,500. So you got in 2020, you got 1,000 police killings, you got 21,000 killings that happened by persons who look like the person they killed. And on that note, I'm going to tell you what I sent the media just recently. And then we're going to watch this film and we're going to get underway. I sent them this report from the Pew Center. This report from the Pew Center is called "Safety Concerns Were Top of Mind for Many Black Americans Before Buffalo Shooting." But you didn't hear everybody in the media telling you that crime was a problem in the city of Buffalo. You hear something every now and then. Another shooting has happened on the east side of Buffalo, or a shooting has happened on the east side of Buffalo, and then they go on to the next news story. Look what's happened on the west side of Buffalo, or on the north side of Buffalo, or on the south side of Buffalo. It's really, truly time for an end to business as usual. And it's time to get serious about violence that happens, including violence that we ourselves do to we ourselves. And on that note, I thank you again for coming, and on behalf of my mother, thank you so much for your support, because we cannot do this alone. No one can. It's going to take community, unity, and maybe like never before in our history, although we've had some history where it's truly been apparent we've needed to. We have got to unite. We've got to unify. Non-violence 365. I'm not saying it as a soundbite. I'm saying because it is a philosophy that needs to become embraced by everyone who truly cares about humanity. Thank you. I'm going to lower the lights. Can anyone lower the lights over there? So we can get this. Do you know how to lower it? It's like right on the wall behind that. It's over behind that curtain, I believe. Right behind it. This is the official trailer of Rebel Cruise.
through streets, they were burning everything. I mean, pandemonium hit. We lost a member that they viciously murdered him out there in the street. Now it's an after night. The Bronx was going to be very red. How rumors spread, there is not a gang in the whole of New York that was not aware of what's happening. It's like they were the warriors, man. The ladies and the waiters, and they about this, and they make their move. Let's get down to our bunkers. We're gonna have to do better out there. This after the treaty came instantaneous. Right there, right there, right there, right there, right there, right there. When we gang busted, we stood in the same area. Now we are able to go here, go there, meet more people, unite with people. Here's where the whole thing started to change. Little by little, that's when the music started to come into the deal. Well, hip hop came from gang culture. Art started something as enemies, they wouldn't stop. It came in a part of music. It was more like challenging to dance now and not to fight. You know, we made a way to have fun. We made a way to feel like we counted, and we made a way to show the world that we actually existed.
Thank you so much. I'm going to sit down because I've got to wait too. Gentlemen, have the floor.
First of all, I'd like to say, that's an interesting trailer. I've did a lot of study about the Rumble Kings. I've done a lot of study about New York gang culture and about the violence that it bred. My family lived in the Bronx. I had a family that lived in Far Rockaway, Queens. So during those times, we would go visit. But I remember being in the Bronx and calling our family members also in Queens, and it was like, you know, it was still tension like during those times. But our legacy is right here in Buffalo, and our gang culture came opposite, where they had gangs that led into dancing and music. We came music to violence. My uncles was from the South, North Carolina, Florida, Alabama. So when they came up to Buffalo, they came for jobs. They came because other relatives had heard about Buffalo being a place where there was a steel industry, you know, Hannah, Republic, L.I. Chemical, Bethlehem Steel, and you can get a job in one day. And if you lose your job, you go across the street and get another job. So when my family came up north, they were running from the South, but they were strong, unified brothers who was against what was taking place in their community, in their town, and that was racism. So they already had a chip on their shoulder. You know, they already had hard labor on their hands. And violence was a way in the South because there wasn't a lot to do, it wasn't a lot of entertainment. So, you know, they all had to go to certain places from all different counties into one club because in the South, there wasn't too many black clubs. So relatives would open up a shack, a barn, and turn it into a juke joint. So that's where all the fights would take place. And they would fight over the women because the women was limited and they were relatives. So the knives and the sticks and the guns and the shotguns, because they were natural hunters anyway, you know. So they all of them knew how to use weapons. So when they came up north to Buffalo, looking for a new way, they was on the run because back then something would happen, and if the police was sort of what friends with the family or the grandfather or something, the word would go out that, you know, you gotta get your son out of here. or get your nephew out of here because they're gonna come get him at night or in the morning. So what we would do, the family would get them out and get them on a bus, and the farthest place they could go was up north. So when they got here, they learned other people was fled into, other people had like-minded situations. A lot of them didn't have nowhere to stay, so you stayed and slept outside, and my other relatives went on to New York while my immediate family came to Buffalo. And, you know, they were in Lackawanna, from Lackawanna to downtown and to the Fruit Belt. And they didn't have their own apartments, but they did have jobs, so they stayed with other people. And until they was able to get their own apartment, then they sent for their other relatives. So when the gang culture came to my neighborhood, it was based on dancing and being in the crew, because it was the end of the 70s movement, the truce, with all the gangs, the Pythons, Matadors, Fillmore Alaturk, all the gangs in the war in the Vietnam. So a lot of my uncles and them came back, and they were strung out on drugs or alcohol or just, you know, going through depression. And so it was us, the youth. And we wanted to be a part of a crew. We wanted to have our own gang. And we wanted to dance and support our community in dancing and carrying on the hip hop scene. What took place was defending our neighborhood, not getting jumped, not getting initiated, not getting recruited. And that was our phobia, that was our fear. So we started a dance group, and we didn't want to get recruited by the young boys that was called the New York Boys. That was just started a Job Corps that came from New York, and they made their way to Job Corps. And then some of them found that Buffalo was a good city to come and pick up a trade too. So they started talking about the subways, tagging, rapping, and stuff. They were doing it in a violent and a malicious way. So Buffalonians was the natives, and the New York boys was clicked up. So we wanted to have our own crew and protect ourselves at the festivity of the Juneteenth. The Juneteenth was the beacon of gang rivalry. It was a place that every teenager, every young person would meet and dance and battle, but then it was fights. So if you didn't have a crew, you was going to be recruited. We didn't have a crew. Montana had a crew, and they were more older and mature, but we didn't have a crew. So Genesee wasn't known for a crew. The bigger boys was, you know, they was robbers. They would smash and grab, stealing cars, and we helped them, but we didn't have our own crew. So we decided that we would meet up, and we would not get initiated, and we would start our own crew. Because the rumor was New York boys would make it to the newspaper. There was a violent gang. It was on the buses. There wasn't no trains then. It was just bus specials. They would take your sneakers, take your name belt, your hats. And if you had your hat on backwards, then you was gang affiliated. But if you had it on correct, then they would probably recruit you. So we wanted to stop that and unify in our neighborhood, which was the Genesee area. And what we did was we said we're gonna meet up at the Juneteenth, and we're gonna all be in unison. We're gonna stay in solidarity, and we're gonna stick together. And we didn't have a street permanent to meet up at, because all of us was kids growing up in our own house, and we didn't want our parents to know what we was doing. So somebody made a suggestion, just meet up on Goodyear. And then we asked the kids who they're gonna know, that how we're gonna identify ourselves. And they said, if you say Goodyear crew, then that means you with us. If you're not, you're just going to the festivities, to make it all sound clear. So we became the Goodyear crew because of the street that we stood on, but it was Genesee was our territory, it was our home. We wanted to be known, so when we went to the Juneteenth, we did what we did, we fought in the beginning stages. So we was unified and we was a brotherhood. But it wasn't until society recognized the drug era. There was a drug pandemic that came into Buffalo when it started with marijuana and cocaine. But the cocaine landed in our neighborhood, and we was already unified, we was already a crew, we was already a culture. So it wasn't until we started getting recruited with the drugs that it became more profitable. And we were targeted because we were doing something that could have embarked on our career because we was businessmen, we was entrepreneurs, and we were dedicated to loyalty. So we was major corporations, miniature corporations, and we was making a lot of money, and while the money was being made, and we were learning how to protect and invest in our community. And it wasn't until the police started realizing these guys are profitable in the community, because we was young adolescents, and they were just starting off in their rookie years, 4 or 5 years, where they had what you call the paddy wagon. So they would ride on a block and grab kids and grab people and put them on curb and find any drugs on them and take everybody down. And then that's when our anger and our anxiety came, that they were the opposition, they were the ops. They were our enemies, and we were the community police, we were the community lords, we were the community corporations. And it was a game to us, but it was an occupation to them. We took charges that we should have never took. We didn't fight our cases. We didn't have a lot of allegation attorneys that wanted to fight, but they gave us cop-out pleas. So our record started extending, and now you're 16, 17, 18 years old, and your first bid is a 1 to 3. They tell you, okay, you're going to get out in a year, you got 2 years on paper. You violate, you go back another year. Now you become a repeat offender. And that was the saga of our era, because that led us into going to jail for a long time. So that's the gang culture that came from GYC Ministries, because it was a GYC gang. And we were introduced to penitentiary, we was introduced to going upstate, we was introduced to farming, recidivism, the prison school pipeline. And that's where this pandemic hit our community, because it took us away from our families, it took us away from fatherhood, it took us away from relationships with our family and our community and our churches and our leaders. So that's the things that happen once you take violence and you find an opportunity in between there to put in a political agenda. Because in the beginning you can change it, in the beginning you can fix it. But once you add something to it, it only makes that production a bigger production and a bigger problem. And that's why, as pastor at GYC, my job and my goal is to reinvent and remobilize the community, but use the same opportunities that we had in the past, but educate and grow our community and buy into our community and have some investment in our own community and teach them economic wealth and economic support, but cultural cultivation. So we can cultivate the same corners, the same streets, the same vacant lots, and teach these young people how to reverse their thoughts.
Pastor, can I ask you a question? You know, I think the way you should do this, I know we're going to have questions, and we might not remember them if they all tell their introduction, their piece, and then we come back. So can we do this like, as they each tell their presentation, then if you have a question, let's go by a show of hands and give them an opportunity to address after each of their presentations. Because I have a question, Pastor. You said that the way that your group formed, then you said the gang formed. My question is this: was your group what you would call a gang before the New York boys came here and manifested themselves as if this was their turf? Would you have been what you call a gang?
We wouldn't have been called a gang, we would have been called a crew, because we just wanted to be a crew. And a crew is a bunch of people that see the same thing, go through the same trials and tribulations, and endure the same thing. But when the opposition came, and that was in a program mindset to challenge this area, this city, then we had no other choice but to defend our neighborhood and defend our girls and our family members and stuff like that. So then it turned from a crew to a gang.
Everybody heard what he said, and we're going to take the question. What he said is something that has been observed, and I've heard this said. Sometimes when we see youth violence, it's youth responding to a threat that has been brought in their direction.
What I want to say is kind of go back to that point, that you were a crew more so and not a gang, right? And so even when things happen where you had to pull together, I wouldn't necessarily even still, I would say you got crewed up. And the reason why within GYC, every man had equal respect. they were just like, so you don't have a warlord, right? You got a bunch of tough young men and sometimes young women. And there was a mutual respect there, a real love and a real brotherhood. It wasn't like they were going to jump you in and beat you up. They were going to, protect you. And so I just, want us to remember that. And that's why he can stand here and do what he's doing today. A lot of people that were in these crews still came from solid, families and knew a concept of right and wrong. That's why he can come full circle today. So, I would like to thank you, and I don't think that I've ever heard anybody tell that story the way that you just did from beginning to the end. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Can I say something? You said something about, yeah. You said something about creating entrepreneurship. And I don't think people really realize how important that is. Because, they're selling drugs, but he said, no, we can do this, we can do entrepreneurship, and we can take the same skill sets that we have, but really make money and not end up in prison. I think that's one of the most important things that you can do in the community is to teach the young people entrepreneurship. Because I can tell you, the worst problem they're gonna have is, I don't wanna work that job, it's only paying this, or it's only paying that. But if you can teach them how to be an entrepreneur, and if they can sell drugs, they can be an entrepreneur. Without going to jail. That's one of the most important things that you can do is teach the kids entrepreneurship.
I just had the question to how would you relate this to racism, or what did you observe from the white community and from the rest of the community? What was going on in that respect? Please, thank you. Just in the history, if you can follow the history along.
Well, the problem with our community was we was on Genesee. You had the beacon of drug conglomerates in the Genesee area. You had the airport, which was a hot commodity for any type of transporting. You had the suburbs, and then you had downtown, which was the professional liaisons. So Genesee was always a hot commodity because our older guys, again, like I said, they were smashing and grabbing, they were robbing, they were stealing cars, but it was the Caucasian people that was invested in Genesee. Whether it's a car, whether it's certain things that was of value. We didn't know those values until the commodity came and the cash came. Because you got kids that could rob and steal, but had enough courage and guts. So they would go find cars, steal them, and deliver them to the people that can afford them. So racism played a big part in our community because even when it came down to supply and demand, we had drugs, but we didn't have a valuable drug because we didn't have valuable resources because African American people are scared of needles, they're scared of drugs. Caucasian people invest in drugs because they party, and they use the drugs for different purposes. So when the money value went up, as the money value went up, then the need to supply and demand went up. So it became a cat and mouse game because in between that was the police, sales, incarceration. We had the ability and the skills, but we didn't have the know-how to know entrapment and things that would get you locked up down the road. So that's where racism came in. And even now, the majority of the people that are on opioids, they come from outside of the inner city. And the demand goes up, so the risk is high. And it pays, but in the end, it's detrimental to your community.